Welcome to Orioles and the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phil and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to take listener questions as part of our latest mailbag. And this episode is going to cover a broad range of topics from the Orioles' offseason plans for player acquisition, as well as their managerial search, as well as how their prospects are performing out in the Arizona Fall League. And of course, if you're watching this episode live, feel free to drop in a comment as the show goes along, and we might get to it on the air. But let's just go ahead and go right into the first question here from Elijah. And this is a good place to start our discussion for the night because it is a very off-season focused question. And it is, what's the most interesting / difficult solution problem the O's roster faces this offseason, and how would you fix it? So what is the most difficult problem the Orioles face? How would you fix it? I'm going to start with Nick here.
No sweat, easy one, right out the gate.
Yeah, I'm going to take it as the most interesting to me. I think I'm personally most interested by the closer situation, like we kind of touched on last week with the fixing the pitching episode we did. I think when we talked about that last week, I don't think any of us think the closer next year is in the organization right now. And like, there are a few guys who, we'd love to see back next year contributing in some sort of bullpen role, but like not the closer role. And you don't need to spend a ton of money to revamp the bullpen and get that in a good place. But closer, I think to find that like trustworthy quality option, I think can be a different story. And I have no problem dishing out a little bit of money there. And I think we mentioned the Devin Williams thing last week. I know that's a popular option. Wouldn't hate it at all. I do think his season, his success would go a little bit differently, not in New York. But I don't know. I'm becoming more like on board of like if Robert Suarez opts out of San Diego, even keep Albert around in some capacity as he rehabs. Maybe he can help, convince brother to hop on over to Baltimore. I don't, the fastball, I was looking at him a little bit more today. Like the fastball doesn't get the number of whiffs I think you'd love to see, but like 97th percentile fastball run value, 97th percentile velo, sitting almost 99 miles an hour, 98.5 miles an hour. It's one of the top fastballs in terms of just raw stuff plus, top 20 in location plus among relievers last season. I don't know. So I think the most interesting is going to be closer and how they address that. And I said I'm not going to like sit here and start banging the table for guys or getting too attached to any potential targets because we know it's just setting yourself up for frustration. But I'm on board with the Robert Suarez to fix the back end of the bullpen situation. That's how I fix it.
I like that. Yeah, that will be. And there's plenty of interesting things that need to happen this offseason. Like, I feel like the list is way bigger than usual, especially for a team with such a, pretty much set core with position players. But closer role, I think it's got to be outside the organization, either Devin Williams, Ryan Helsley, or Robert Suarez. Maybe you do Ranger Robert Suarez combo addition this offseason would be interesting. For me, I think the most difficult problem is, we talked about it recently too, is just these guys that are here are the core. They need to reach their potential the way they did in 2023 in the first half of 2024. We talked about how hitting the fastball was a problem this year, hitting balls in the zone. You got to fix that. I don't know how to do it, but you got to. And I would say another of the biggest problems, if I can sneak in a second one, is like, we want to add a big bat, a veteran bat, I'm assuming, but where do you do it? Like, do you need to mix things up by, we discussed this a little bit in the Discord recently, do you trade a Jordan Westberg, like make a big move, like trade a Jordan Westberg with a couple other pieces to get a Joe Ryan, to get that 1 year of Tarek Skubal, or make a bigger splash that way, and then you sign an Alex Bregman or the Japanese third base first base guy coming over? Is that how you can mix things up? I think I would personally, I don't know. I think I would just probably sign a guy like Kyle Schwarber or Pete Alonso and just try to make it work any way you can. But that's probably just the brute force way to go about it. But what do you think, Zach?
Those are both good answers, and those are problems the Orioles have to address this offseason. For me, the really challenging question is what do you do with the outfield? Because you have a hole in center field, and you could probably use a corner outfield bat. Here's the problem, though, is that the center field free agent market is not very good this offseason. You have Trent Grisham coming off the best offensive season of his career, which he has never had a season close to what he had last year for the Yankees. He's only had 1 year prior to 2025 in which he appeared in 100 and more games and had a WRC plus above 100. The rest of the totals across the board has not been close to this. Harrison Bader, meanwhile, in a lot of ways fits what the Orioles need well. Good defensive center fielder, hits from the right side of the plate. The problem is that the last time he had a season that looked like 2025 was back in 2021. And you look at the numbers in the 3 seasons in between, he was a below league average bat. So I almost wonder, and this is a move that I know would be really welcomed in some corners and not as much in others, is do you go out and get a corner outfield bat this offseason and put Colton Cowser in center field, knowing that that's the best way to improve the offense? And it's kind of why I'm starting to come around Cody Bellinger a little bit. Put Bellinger in left field. The batted ball data has never been great, but it wasn't that bad last year. You bring him in. He's your everyday left fielder. Cowser moves over the center. And then between Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Beavers, maybe a Rob Refsnyder type player, you figure out right field. But I think that you have to solve center field, but the market doesn't really favor going out and getting a pure center fielder because it's either going to be Trent Grisham or Harrison Bader off of free agency, or it's going to be trading for a guy like Byron Buxton. The corner outfield market, though, is a little bit better. So maybe you do go ahead and decide, at least for this coming year, Colton Cowser is your center fielder. And if Enrique Bradfield Jr. can break through and be that guy by the end of 2026 or 2027, you worry about it then. But in my mind, if you really want to improve this lineup, that might be the way to go.
Yeah, it could certainly be the way to go. Although I like Bellinger in general as just a solid player. I think he's going to get such a big contract compared to what I would want from like a 5-6 year $100+ million contract. So I'm not sold on Bellinger specifically, but I do think that is certainly a route they could go. Although I'm starting to think EBJ, he wants that job. Maybe he just wins it out of spring, but maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. Yeah. All right. So next up is a question from Daddy Batty, who, don't be fooled by the name. Silly name, but a very good Discord member and good questions here. Where do you think the manager search ranks in importance / impact compared to each of the player needs? Nick?
I just don't think it means that much. Like, and personally, I don't really care who the manager is. It's just, and a lot of that too is just because like we can't sit here and I feel like have like a real debate or conversation about the manager. There's like nothing to like quantify and look at and discuss. Like we could sit here and have, at least the way I view it, I could sit here and talk for 3 hours about Dominican Summer League prospects and their data and all of that and debate that. But managers, like not in the clubhouse. I don't know. And I don't know how that relationship is going to work with Elias in this front office. But even like that, like are there players who are like, I need to know who the manager is before I sign? Like I might be interested in signing with Baltimore, but I will not sign until I know who the manager is. Like, I don't know if that's going to be a deal breaker as well for like some of the guys the Orioles may be targeting and trying to sign quickly this offseason. So yeah, I think it's at the bottom as far as like importance is concerned.
Yeah, it ranks for me below the best player acquisitions you can have because you could hire, pick your favorite manager that's a candidate right now. If they inherit the roster that was left at the end of the 2025 season, they're not going to turn that into a 95-win team. So you have to have some improvements in there, particularly to the rotation, but you have to address the bullpen. You have to address the outfield, as we were just talking about a moment ago. So, and as I said recently, and I think this has kind of been lost in the discussion about who the Orioles should hire, there is no tried and true formula for turning things around. They could hire the next Stephen Vogt and turn this team around, or they could hire the next hotshot manager that's never managed before, or managerial candidate, I should say, has never managed before, and fall flat on their faces. I don't really know what's going to be the difference there. But the bottom line is that you have to have a better roster than what you had last year, and it starts there. I want them to get the managerial decision right. I do think that it does matter, but that decision alone is not going to reverse the fortunes of this team next year.
Yeah, I think it's important. I actually think it's very important and has a big impact. But like Nick said, and unless we're going to live stream the interview process, there's no way to know. Like, there's no way. I have no opinion. I'm gonna have to assume they know what they're doing and they're gonna pick the right guy for the job. As far as, I might just rank the level of importance on the checklist. I'd say starting at least one middle of the rotation, preferably two starting pitchers. That's top of the list. Then I would say the closer, then an impact bat, then the manager, then rest of the bullpen acquisitions, the rest of the bench role players types below that. So yeah, I do think it's important. It's so hard to know. I'm just gonna, well, at least until after the hiring, and then you can listen to an interview with the person and be like, okay, I like what they're saying. Other than that, there's really nothing to go off of.
It would be a much more fun conversation if we were the Giants right now.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is a conversation I would love to have, but I don't think. I think the rest of the league is going to be looking at Tony Vitello in San Francisco and see how that goes. So I don't think the Orioles are going to go hire the next guy available down there in the college ranks. But we'll move on to the Bird is the Word has a question. Who are your top 3 free agent targets and trade targets? Are we throwing out 6 names? Are we throwing out 3 combined? I got 6 names I can just throw out there, but who do you guys have on your list for free agent targets and trade targets this offseason?
So I'll start here with my list. Joe Ryan's my top trade target. I got into that a little bit last week. I just think that what you're getting for 2 years of team control, the strikeout numbers he produces, the fact that everything seems to be on the upward trajectory for him is a real positive. After that, if the Orioles can get Freddie Peralta as their number 2 or number 3 starter, that is a huge bonus. And honestly, I like Peralta enough that if you brought him in and you brought in a number 4, I would consider that a successful offseason. But if we're looking at our top targets, not having to think a whole lot about the realism of it, bring in Ryan, bring in Peralta. And then for trade targets, Seiya Suzuki is kind of interesting on the Cubs. I'm going to get into him a little bit more in a moment, but a right-handed bat who hits for power, walks about 10% of the time. And then for free agents, now that I've solved the rotation and one part of the lineup, Devin Williams would be my top target in free agency. I would go out and I'd get Rob Refsnyder. And maybe then it's Cody Bellinger. I mean, that might be too many outfielders, DH types, especially with Tyler O'Neill still around, but some combination of those 6 players. And if I had to drop a hitter, I'd probably drop Suzuki and look for a reliever that I could pick up in a trade package. But regardless, I want to see 2 starter positions filled, a couple of spots in the lineup, and 1 or 2 bullpen positions filled this offseason through free agency or trade.
Yeah, this is a good question, interesting question, because I think we could acquire as many as 6 guys this offseason total to add to the team. Free agent wise, I would say number 1 on my list is Devin Williams. Number 2, I would say Dylan Cease. I just like, and we've talked about these guys recently, but I just like them a lot. And number 3, Garrett in his Discord, we disagree vehemently on the Enrique Bradfield discussion, but he's talked me into Kazuma Okamoto from the the Giants. Yeah, the Yomiuri Giants. So hey, Sugano, let's put a good word in for us here. I really like the profile. 29 years old, play third base, first base. Maybe you could see if he can play in a corner outfield as well. But just speaking of Seiya Suzuki, I think he's kind of a similar bat to Suzuki, except he can play on the infield. Really like that, especially if you're going to trade a Jordan Westberg or who knows, make a big move like that, then I think he could be a sneaky guy to slide in there. And on the trade front, I will say I had it in my head. Number one, let's see. I want it's slipped my mind now. All right, Byron Buxton. I'll just say Byron Buxton. I know he's probably not getting traded. He wants to stay in Minnesota, but I think if that can get done, that would be number one on my list.
When they start trading away his friends, he'll want to be traded.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. So Pablo Lopez, I'll throw him out there just because I had him, but the injuries do scare me a little bit. And let's just say another starting Sandy Alcantara. I had a better list than that, but then talking about the free agents made it slip my mind.
Yeah, for the trades, I mean, I think everybody's looking at the two Twins guys. I had Pablo Lopez. This isn't like in any particular order, but just three names. I had Pablo Lopez just because I think you shoot for Joe Ryan and you see what that asking price is. I think he's the better pitcher long term that I'd like to have in the rotation. But if you're looking at a trade and the Twins are going to go to this dark place that some people think they're going to go to and start really shedding payroll, would the cost be a lot lower? And as far as like prospect capital is concerned, to get a Pablo Lopez, I don't know, but I think it might be. I had Sandy Alcantara on my list as well, just because I think his second half performance or final 2-month performance that gave me enough confidence in that he's going to continue to rise. And if he does, I'm also fine with trading up a little bit. I think the Marlins are, if they have plans of trading him this offseason, have to be ecstatic about his late season performance because they're going to be able to get more for him this offseason. And I'm fine if it costs a little bit more now, because if he continues that upward trajectory, then which is certainly possible, he's got a club option for 2027 at just $21 million. So I think you got a good deal there. Another option, I looked at the Reds because of the Hunter Green thing last week. That's fun to think about. It's going to cost a ton. Would not hate it at all. But if you're looking at the Reds, if they're going to move a starter, I don't know if he would be like one of my top targets here. But just to throw a new name out there, what about a Nick Lodolo? Healthy last year, finally. You talk about injuries. Yeah, that if you're like, no, because the injuries, I fully get that. But 156 innings this year, a 3.3 ERA, expected ERA, FIP, XFIP, all there right in line. 24% strikeout rate, just a 4.8% walk rate. I honestly had no idea the walk rate was that good for him. I think it's just 2 more seasons of control, but looking at Cincinnati, if they're going to look at to deal some pitchers, I wouldn't mind Lodolo there. Could be interesting. Free agents. Yeah, I think last week, we talked about Fromber and Cease a little bit. It's not because of the incident with Fromber. It's not because of the late season performance, but when I look at Dylan Cease, I think I talked myself into Dylan Cease a lot more last week. I think he'd be one of my top options for a pitcher. Rangers Suarez, I think I'd have number 2. I would love to have him. Talk about consistency and just somebody who doesn't allow hard hit balls. Would love to have him as well. And my top target as far as free agencies, if we get to dream big right now, because it's October 22nd, Kyle Tucker, I'll put him at the top of the list. You want to solve the outfield situation there? No questions asked, easy solution. Just I know that's very low probability of that happening, and you already got, is it Heyman or whoever? He's a Dodger, but whatever. We can dream big this early.
Yeah, we'd love to think of the possibility of Kyle Tucker as an Oriole. We'll have to see where that's going to go, though. We'll go to a question now from Bobby Jones, which is, what is the best return the Orioles can get for a package that includes prospect pitcher Jerron Watts-Brown and Boston Bateman, along with catcher Creed Willems? And I'll start with Bob on this one.
As I'm choking on my energy drink. baseball trade values website. Gotta do the obvious antidote that this is not a perfect science. I do not think this website has it down to a perfect measure, but it is the best we have as far rather than just guessing off the tops of our head. They have the combined Boston Bateman worth 10.4 surplus, Jerron Watts Brown worth 4.9 surplus, and Creed Willems worth 1.5 surplus for a combined 16.8. And if you're looking, I just picked a team that is probably going to be dealing away players in the Minnesota Twins, who we've talked about already. And that gives you a starting pitcher the caliber of as high as Zebby Matthews. He's worth 17.8. He has 5 years of control left. Simeon Woods Richardson, he's worth 16.2, also has 5 years of control left. And Bailey Ober, worth 16.6, could be a sneaky target from the Twins to go along with Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez. 2 years of control left, but coming off a pretty good year or two here. So yeah, that's what I would imagine you could get.
Yeah, I looked around a little bit as well, and some of the other names I saw though were like it matches up for like a Mitch Keller, but like the Pirates aren't going to trade Mitch Keller for that package. They're trading
And is
Mitch
he
Keller.
really much different than a Dean Kramer type?
That's what I was thinking when I was looking at this. First of all, I'm seeing way too much of this already. Like we can't. It's way too early for everybody to be throwing the same exact names out there for all these trade packages, and it's always the new guys. It's always Jerron Watts Brown or Boston Bateman. Give these guys a chance.
I said it's easier to do that because we're not attached to them yet. So it's like, oh, he's worth this much. Yeah, let's throw him in there.
I know. I just trying to word this so we're not like just like dumping on their prospect status, because that's not what I'm trying to do here at all. I don't think you get very much at all for that specific package as far as like a proven major league starter. And if you any major league starter you're going to get, I feel like we've already got 5 of them like in house already. And it's just like, because Jerron Watts Brown, I'm not going to say I'm super high on him, but I'm very intrigued. I've said this since the end of the season episode, like recapping Bowie or whatever, Chesapeake. Jerron Watts Brown, and I wrote about this as soon as the trade happened. He's improved. A lot of the pitch data has improved this year. And yes, he's a whiff monster, but I feel like that fastball, if the Orioles work on that fastball, that could take him to another level. And I don't see many teams being like super high on Jerron Watts Brown as a prospect, but I like having him in the system. If the Orioles can get more out of that fastball and take him to get another gear out of him, he does become a super intriguing, like potential back of the rotation type starter option for you within like the next year's time. Bateman, yeah, that's like, it's a $2.5 million arm, selected 52nd overall. He's like, what, 20 years old? I think a lot of teams would be interested in him, but the issue is like Creed Willems. Like if you're high on his defensive abilities and you think he could be like a backup catcher for you in the big leagues, great. But he's Rule 5 eligible. And if he has to move off the catching position, like, is that bat going to do enough in the big leagues to hold up as like full-time first base DH? I don't know. But yeah, I think for this specific package, the return you're going to be looking at is probably not one that I would trade those 3 guys for.
Yeah, I struggled with this one too because I immediately went back to, well, what did they get you at the trade deadline? Jerron Watts Brown was essentially traded straight up for a reliever that had half a season of team control left in Sir Anthony Dominguez. And the Padres built that package around Boston Bateman to get half a season of Ryan O'Hearn and a year and a half of Ramon Laureano, assuming that his team option is going to be exercised if it hasn't already. So knowing that it's more of a seller's market at the deadline, I figure that the price should be a little bit more in the Orioles' favor as buyers in this case. But where I struggled was I started to, with a trade simulator, I thought of the guys off the top of my head who I thought fit the profile. Seiya Suzuki was one. Solid everyday player on the last year of team control. Trade simulator says that it's high in the Cubs' favor, like disproportionate disproportionately high in the Cubs' favor because they don't value Suzuki that much. But I feel like the real trade market is going to be closer to that kind of player. Same for Wilson Contreras, who has a couple of years left to control with the Cardinals and who the Orioles could possibly take some of his salary. And then for another Cardinal, Sonny Gray. That's another guy I thought about. But the simulator, again, had that disproportionately in favor of the team on the other end of the package. So I feel like what would happen if you package those three guys, though, going back to what happened at deadline, is 1 year of a really good bat who's maybe not, perennial all-star caliber, but a solid everyday player or a solid mid to back end starter on a 1 year deal. If they're going to trade any of those guys this offseason, particularly Watts Brown or Bateman, I would prefer to see them as the piece that gets you over the hurdle to acquire a big name player. So let's say you're in a negotiations with the Twins to get Joe Ryan, and you can't build the package around Boston Bateman, but maybe you put Boston Bateman in there knowing that it saves a couple of guys that you don't really want to give up. That's where the value is. I don't think that in these three players in particular together, you're going to get a whole lot. So if this is the package that I'm looking at for a 1 year of a slightly above league average bat or mid to back end starter, probably not doing that trade.
Yeah, like Nick said, we have plenty of those types of players. A Dean Kramer type, that's not what we need. We need a middle, and nothing wrong with those types of players. But the Orioles have a lot of depth in that zone right now. So we want a mid to upper, at least upside player in that role. And yeah, I mean, we have Tyler O'Neill. So I don't really think like that expiring contract decently above like a 110 to 120 WRC plus type of bat for 1 year. I don't know if you want to give up that much for something like that. My turn. Half has a question. He would like to know if you had to include Levi Wells, Nestor Urman, or Michael Ferret in a trade for an ace pitcher, who are you least willing to move? Same question for Esteban Mejia, Boston Bateman, or Joseph Zerwa, if you have time. And we do. So we will answer both of these. What do you think, Zach?
So I'll start with the first group of three. The one that I'm least willing to give up is Ferret, because you look at this past season, it feels like the national consensus has not quite come around on Ferret yet. He missed a little bit of time with injury, but when he's on the mound, he is so good. And the pitch mix that he has, I've said it before, and I'm not a fan of player comparisons, but I've said this before. There's a lot of Kyle Braddis in Michael Ferret, and you're getting him at a younger age than you got Braddis. He's going to be in your system the whole time as you're trying to develop him. I think Michael Ferret's value can be higher than it is right now, which is why, although I'm reluctant to give up any of the three, if I have to trade one of them, I'd look at Wells or Herman first, because I do think Ferret's value can be higher. I think he could go out over 90 to 100 innings next year and pitch really well between AA and AAA. And at that rate, he's either the top trade chip in your organization, or you don't want to move him because you're that high on him. So I wouldn't move on from Ferret. And then in the latter group, it's a tough call because Giroux we have not seen yet. And then with Mejia and Bateman, they're both lower level guys with high ceilings, but a lot of question marks. I think in that case, though, I would probably go with the ceiling of Mejia, where he's just burst onto the scene. But at the same time, a lot of this was based on 3 low A starts. So if, again, you can get 70 to 80 innings out of him between Delmarva and Frederick next year, and the stuff looks the same, his value is going to be a lot higher. Now, with that said, I might have said the same thing about Keel or Morphe last offseason and been wrong. But I do think of those 3 pitchers, Mejia has the highest ceiling, and in the short term has the most opportunity for his value to grow.
I like these questions a lot, to be honest. get you thinking about some of these guys. And for the first one, the Levi Wells, Nestor Herman, Michael Ferret, I I will be the Levi Wells defender of this group. I think he's the guy that I'd be least willing to part with, just because I mean he's sitting in the mid 90s. He touched 100 last year. A lot of writing this offseason already about him having some of the best stuff, pure raw stuff in the organization, and the potential 4+ pitches in his arsenal. Baseball America, Jeff Bond specifically calling him one of the more underrated starters in the minors, not just in the organization. And the AAA numbers not fantastic last year, but only 20 innings, and I think a lot of those numbers are skewed a little bit because I think he got rocked his first outing. But is the adjustments that we talk about all the time, these guys making a AAA, not too concerned at all about the AAA numbers, but the fact that when he got to AA this year, strikeout rate remained largely the same, around that 25% mark, but he dropped the walk rate pretty significantly. Fairly dominant down there in AA. So I'm pretty stoked to see what he can do in AAA. And the other one, Giroux, Bateman, or Mejia. This is one I had a harder time. Who would I be least willing to part with? Mejia, I keep saying this over and over, give the tall, young international arms some time to find their control. And if Mejia does, you got Josh Norris out there at Baseball America saying he's a future ace, not just a number one, but like a pure ace, which is super high praise for an 18, 19-year-old kid. But that's the kind of raw stuff he has. That would be very enticing, of course, if he pans out. He could also have a Keeler Morphe S season next year. Hope not, but that is in the cards because he's a young flamethrower pitcher. Bateman, like I've mentioned with him, is just last year in the few outings we got from him after the trade, I didn't see like that 2-strike put away stuff that I just always left wanting more every time I watched Bateman. And I think that can be in there. He's still a very young arm, a long way to go in his development. Orioles haven't had an opportunity yet to really dive in and change what they want to change there. So we could see a pretty electric Boston Bateman next year. But for right now, I think it's because the unknown. I'm going Joseph Giroux. He's 6'7" arm, and this isn't like a gimmicky, who was the guy that was in low A for like 5 years there, the 6'9" guy or whatever, who couldn't strike or could just walked everybody. But
Jared Beck.
Yeah, the Jared Beck. Like Giroux is 6'7", from the Big Ten. He's touching 95 in college. He's sitting in the lower 90s, but like that's one of those low-hanging fruit things with Giroux that I think an organization, the Orioles drafted him, so the Orioles can clean up pretty quickly since they drafted him, and he hasn't debuted yet, so they got half a year there to work with him behind the scenes. I think you're going to be really impressed with his velo from the left side. I pulled up his thing from college real quick. Changeup got a 40% whiff rate last year in college. 4 pitches, all with stuff plus grades between 104 and 113 last year in college. I just think you talk about good moldable clay. I'm very high on Giroux.
Yeah, I like these picks. I think I'm going to go with Ferret in that first group, but Levi Wells is a close second. And I love Nestor Herman, but hate to say, I think he might be the one I'd be most willing to give up out of those three. Yeah, Levi Wells, the postseason content already is just make me even higher than I already was on him. And basically, Baseball America is telling Keith Law to shut the F up. You don't know what you're talking about when it comes to Levi Wells, which is nice to see. But I think Levi Wells could be a sleeper contender in the rotation at some point in 2026. And hey, maybe this is the future closer of the Baltimore Orioles' next playoff contender World Series team. And for the other one, I have to put Mejia number one, but again, Joseph Giroux, I'm very excited to see him show out next year, or at least get to see what he can do. Hopefully it's not a Carson Dorsey situation and he starts the year on the IL or something or a Chase Allsup situation where he doesn't. I don't think it's going to be, but yeah, Boston Bateman again. We're not attached to you, so you can go.
Hope he's not listening.
Next question. I think. Oh, sorry. My last thing. Just to say, Boston Bateman, and I agree with this. Someone in the Discord was like, "Yeah, we're all trying to trade him now, but if he's still in this organization a year from today, we're all going to be like, he's untouchable." Which, yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah. The pitching, like when you look at who has popped over the last 2 years, and the unexpected pitchers who have popped the last 2 years, it makes it hard to think about who could be the next kind of crop next year. But next question comes from Tony, and he says, if Elias gets a top or middle of the rotation arm, basically the rotation's set. We are feeling good. Let's preface this before I know someone's going to comment. I can probably tell you who exactly is going to comment after the fact. And us talking about some trash heap guys. In this scenario, the rotation is set, right? It's perfect. It's pristine. It's lovely. Now, which veteran pitching project should be targeted as a low risk, high reward type for depth purposes? Zach, any gross targets you got in mind?
My first thought was Michael Lorenzen, but I think he might actually be a little bit too good for this category, so I will pull him out. This is one name that came to my mind is Jordan Montgomery. Like, what if you could somehow fix him and at least have a solid left-hander out of the bullpen? I would look there. Frankie Montas is going to have Tommy John surgery and miss all of 2026. So otherwise, that might have been a guy I would look at. But yeah, this is a tough one. I will say, though, that I think regardless, the Orioles have to think ahead about who they're going to have at Norfolk next year, because one of the problems I think they had last season was that they cycled through their depth at AAA too quickly and weren't left with a lot of good options to bring up in an emergency. So that is something they have to think about a little bit this offseason. But maybe it's Montgomery if your rotation is really set. If it's not, and you're just looking for someone who could come in and possibly win the fifth starter job out of spring training, I would go with Lorenzen, because strikeout to walk numbers were actually pretty good last year. Sweeper continues to be an effective weapon for him. Fastball velocity was actually up a little bit last year, but if you refine his pitch mix enough, he might not have to rely on the fastball as much and can be pretty effective for you.
I'm just looking at the list. I think my initial answers are going to be too high class for this depth. Like, this is not really the player we think we need right now. But I guess if we were going to do that, I think I could see Eric Fede being a guy the Orioles are interested in, because I feel like when he was coming back from overseas and there was a little bit of a hype on him, it was like he's kind of like poor man's Kyle Bradish type of pitcher, a little bit over the top delivery, kind of a similar pitch mix. So maybe if the Orioles think, hey, we got Bradish to maximize his potential, maybe they can see it with Fede. Other than him, I'm thinking German Marquez? Marquez. Rockies, I know Vivek in the chat loves him, so shout out Vivek. But also, I've liked him a lot too. He's coming off of injury and a very bad season this year, but maybe another offseason removed, you think you can do something with him. Maybe that's a guy. And I know Garrett in the Discord is going to want us to mention Nestor Cortez on a 2-year deal, as he's gone under the knife, but I'm not really interested in that reunion myself.
When I saw this question, like, I thought gross. Like, pick a name that like people are going to throw up a little in their mouth. So, and I try to find someone. I think I found someone that I actually kind of like. Again, the idea being the rotation is set, and ideally we probably never even see this person make a major league start. But what if? And my guy is, I'm going Austin Gomber, going to the Rockies. Well, 31 years old. I researched this here. Did not go well with the Rockies, obviously. But I was reading in preparation for this question that Gomber put a lot of pressure on himself in being that return for the Nolan Arenado trade, and kind of let that get to him. He said he talked about how he really lost himself out there in Colorado, like who he is as a person and a pitcher on the mound. He started this year on the 60-day IL, had a great first start against the Braves, and then it just all went downhill from there. He ends up getting released. Gets picked up by the Cubs on a minor league deal, 19 innings down in AAA, 19 strikeouts, 2 walks, a .47 ERA in AAA with the Cubs. those numbers, they are what they are. It's a 31-year-old pitcher in AAA. I get it. But the more quotes, the more you read about him, it seemed like the guy was like truly depressed and just done. And you kind of feel bad for him. I don't know if like a fresh start away from the Rockies could salvage something. Like the fastball's not going to blow you away, but he's got like 4 or 5 pitches. He's got a couple of them like 110, 111 stuff plus. Like it's the stuff plus kind of tanked this year as well across the board, but there's some like raw stuff still there. I don't know. I think maybe even could be a guy like a 2-3 in that long relief role if you're able to fix something. But as a veteran, like gross minor league signing with the invite to spring training guy, that's one of my guys I'd target.
It's a good pull right there with Gomber. I'll go to the next question now from EJ, who wants to know who is the most likely non-MLB debuted Orioles prospect to be traded in the offseason. This covers a really, really broad range of guys. You could, in theory, go all the way down to the DSL, look at players that were just drafted last year, or go up to AAA and look at some of the guys that were there at the end of last season. So broad group here, but I'll start with Bob. What's your thoughts on the most likely Orioles prospect who has not debuted yet to be traded this offseason?
Yeah, this is a tough one. My first thought is Creed Willems, Alex Pham, guys who it seems a little overcrowded and they're Rule 5 eligible. I think Alex Pham is Rule 5 eligible. But either way, yeah, a guy like that. Or if you want to look a little higher up, Boston Bateman, I think, is realistically an option. Out of the guys that I think the Orioles traded for, I think he could have the most value to trade out if they wanted to flip one of those guys. It's really tough. Is at the top, I just don't see anyone that, I mean, yeah, maybe you have to give up a Levi Wells, a Michael Ferret type if you're really going for that ace type of guy. But I really don't see anyone in that top 15 that I think the Orioles are really going to be wanting to trade this offseason.
Yeah, this one's tough. The first thing that came to my mind, call it recency bias, because like we're watching him in the AFL, but like Luis De Leon, I don't know. We talked about this last week. I know nobody wants to move him now, but like if you make a big time splash, like I could see that. Everyone's going to want a lefty who's sitting 96 and touching 98.5 right now and getting the swing and miss that he is. I could see that. I almost wonder if you look at the way the draft shook out last year. I think Ike Irish was certainly someone who the Orioles were ecstatic to get. They're ecstatic for all these guys, obviously, but I think you're pretty hyped up that he falls to you. Caden Bodine, I feel like was a target all along of the Orioles. And as much as I love Wahiva Aloy, and I said when I watched him in Delmarva, I couldn't believe that like I get to watch Wahiva Aloy after watching him so much in college and how special he was there at Arkansas to now like I get to watch him here in an Orioles system. And given the fact that, you know, we talk about that infield depth in the minor leagues last year was a major weakness of the organization. I just keep getting like a vibe. Like maybe it could be Wahiva Aloy. I don't want to say he's not like extra in any way, but you were really blessed in that draft that he fell and he becomes like this third top pick for you. So I don't know. Again, if you're going to make like a big swing and a big trade and you got to move one of these top guys, I think he could be an option. But yeah, I don't know. I get weird feelings about Luis De Leon, especially because he's showcasing stuff so well. Everybody is out there with fresh scouts, fresh eyes, watching him in the Arizona Fall League. I know a lot of teams are going to be calling, but hopefully it's the Orioles are like, yeah, no thanks. We didn't send him out there to showcase. We sent him out there to eat up innings or get more innings because we have big plans for him in 2026.
My answer here is Creed Willems because he is Rule 5 eligible and because I think he's in this weird space right now where he hasn't made a strong enough case, especially with the depth you have at catcher, to be protected this offseason. But there's a reasonable argument, especially if a team wants to make him a first base DH type next year, for taking him in the Rule 5 draft. And if he goes to Norfolk next year and has a good season, you're going to have a much tougher decision on your hands if you still have Adley and Basayo in front of him. So maybe you get out in front of that and you decide we're going to move Willems now while we can get something for him, while he's still in the organization, knowing too that catcher at AAA is the easiest thing to backfill in the offseason. You can find 2 or 3 guys that are close to Major League ready or have been to the majors before to catch at Norfolk next year. Caden Bodine will probably start the year at Frederick. Ethan Anderson's going to be at Chesapeake. So your upper level catching depth is set if you move Willems. With that said, though, I want to go back to something that Nick said because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The Garrett Crochet trade last year between the Red Sox and the White Sox. The White Sox got 3 close to or essentially big league ready players back, plus the Red Sox top pick in the prior year draft in Braden Montgomery. So Braden Montgomery might not have been the top target in that trade, but he was certainly a guy who could put it over the top. High floor prospect, a lot to like about him. I think that he could be a solid everyday major leaguer someday. What if the Orioles have to move someone towards the top of last year's draft class to get a player back? And I can tell you 2 guys that I don't think it will be. One of them is Bodine, because catcher, his value could seemingly be higher if he hits at the upper levels. Plus, if the Orioles are planning to move on from Adley Rutschman after 2027, Bodine might be the guy in-house that's your replacement. And I definitely don't think Slater DeBrun is going anywhere. There's a lot of questions flying around. Is any prospect untouchable? Not in the way that Gunnar Henderson or Adley Rutschman or Samuel Basayo were, but are you going to move a guy that you just paid about $2 million over slot for this offseason when he has not played an official game in your farm system yet? So then you're left really with Iris, Aloy, Jirwa, or JT Quinn as the guy at the top of last year's draft class you can move. And maybe the Orioles aren't going to make that kind of trade this offseason. But if we're going to use the Crochet deal from last year as a baseline, seemingly any of those guys could fill the Braden Montgomery spot.
Yeah, that's good good observations there for sure. And let's move on to the most Kevin Brown question. Our Kevin Brown could ever ask, can the 2026 Orioles be worse than the 2025 Orioles? And if so, three reasons why. Nick?
I mean, not the kind of question I want to be thinking about on October 22nd when the offseason hasn't even started yet, but I don't know. Trevor Rogers, I mean, yes, it can get a lot worse, actually, despite what I'm sure some people believe. Trevor Rogers, he's going to regress statistically next year. We've talked about that a lot, but that regression goes even more extreme. And then a guy who you're really counting on to be one of your top 3 probably arms, maybe top 4 at worst arms, you're not looking great in that rotation. Again, the front office fails to bring in anyone of significance in the offseason as far as rotation of the big bats. Another failure there. And, the young bats like Kobe Mayo doesn't take a step forward that we all think he will after that strong September. And the plans the Orioles have with him to keep attacking that bat hitting development. Basayo doesn't take off as we all think he will next year. And even Jackson Holiday doesn't take another step forward next year. And then God help us all. But
yeah, the fact that Kevin is coming to us on October 22nd and asking us this convinces me the Orioles are going to win the World Series this year. But I think that if you're looking for where they can regress, it's in the areas as last year, same areas as last year. Pitching staff falters early. They can't recover. The offense regresses or doesn't get better, and injuries just pile up. And there's a lot of ways that could go. The bullpen could definitely be a lot worse than it was last year. That's one area where, if you want to look at where there's possible regression, that I think the Orioles need to be aggressive in addressing this offseason, making sure you can get through a whole season without an established closer in Felix Bautista, and without guys like Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Andrew Kittredge around, in the first half, or guys that put together solid final months in Rico Garcia or Cade Stroud. You take those guys out of the equation, the bullpen looks a lot worse than it did this past year. So that's an area where it can regress. And with the lineup, yeah, like Nick said, what if Jackson Holiday doesn't take a step forward? What if Samuel Basayo's first year kind of looks like Jackson Holiday's first full year? What if we've already seen the best of Adley? Kevin, it's October 22nd. You're getting me this negative. Come on. But, yeah, there's a lot of ways it can get worse.
Yeah, of course. And to just tack on a couple other ways it could go is if the injury bug does not slow down, and maybe it catches a Gunnar Henderson this time. Maybe it catches Jackson Holiday, who kind of avoided it, and he was going to take that next step, but he got hurt. And the pitchers, maybe, I don't even want to say because I don't want to jinx it. Grayson Rodriguez never pitches again for the Orioles, whatever, what have you. That's one way. Another way is if, again, we have another offseason like last year where it's like we try to make the big moves and it just doesn't come to fruition. And you're running it back. And what if it's similar issues, not health, but just performance related, that just continue themselves? Colt Kauser never learns how to hit a changeup and all the stuff Zach listed, et cetera, et cetera. Other than that, yeah, maybe the bullpen is just so bad that it blows a bunch of games and then you get down, and the new manager, Albert Pujols, he can't handle it, and the clubhouse implodes. Yeah, there's a lot of ways this could go, but let's try to be optimistic. Hope springs eternal.
Yeah. Not the last question here, but it looks like next last question here. Bobby S has any guesses on the next manager? Speaking of managers there, is it safe to assume that Albert Pujols is not going to get the job? Do you guys have any favorites at this point?
It's definitely safe, in my opinion, to assume that Pujols is not getting the job. Same with Scott Servais, who was linked to the Orioles recently. And I feel like there was one more where I'm like, oh, so they're out. I don't know. I'm going to do a dark horse sleeper. I saw Yadier Molina, excuse me. So it says he could be interested in managing / coaching. And hey, what if he's just saying that because he's interviewed with the Orioles and he got the job? But my real guess is Rocco Baldelli. I don't know why. I've liked him. I think he's a veteran. He's coming from a Minnesota Twins who are obviously disappointing, but I don't think it's particularly because of him. So,
yeah, I was actually about to mention Baldelli as a candidate, and there's a few reasons why I'm thinking about Baldelli. One is that he's being very coy with his own plans. He's kind of alluded to maybe wanting to take a year off, which if he's actively looking for a job, the Orioles have to love that he's feeding that publicly. And we haven't, there's been speculation oh, Rocco Baldelli is available and the Orioles need a manager. Maybe they'll interview him. Outside of that, there's really no concrete reports linking Baldelli to the Orioles. So there's that factor. Then the other thing is that I feel like in a weird way, he checks off a lot of boxes. He's an analytically minded guy who has experience as a manager, has won before, and has won a postseason series before. So if anybody wants to make a direct comparison to Brandon Hyde, there's one difference, Rocco Baldelli. He's won a postseason series before. He's also, though, a former player who is young enough that he could probably relate to the younger players a little bit better than someone that hasn't played in 30 or 40 years. So there's just it's not that he checks off every box, but he just has enough going for him in each category that you could see him as a fit for the Orioles. As for Albert Pujols, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, I know that there was overlap with Mike Elias' time in St. Louis with when Pujols was a player. So I'm sure that even if Elias didn't have a lot of direct interaction with Pujols during that time, he knows what he's getting into as far as a person, as far as clubhouse presence. Pujols is one of the best players of this generation, one of the best first basemen of all time, first ballot Hall of Famer, which brings me around to this point, which is that he doesn't really need to manage. And if you look at the reports suggesting why he didn't get the Angels job, if it was really compensation and control over the coaching staff that broke down the talks between him and the Angels, unless the Angels were being really unreasonable, that's going to break down the discussions with any organization. So I do think Pujols will manage one day, but I'd be very surprised if it's with the Orioles right now.
Hey, at least it won't be Kurt Suzuki on a 1-year deal. Do they still trade for managers? Like, could maybe the AJ Hinch could get traded to the Orioles somehow?
Kevin Cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's hard, right? I would not hate Baldelli at all. It's kind of annoying there for a couple years as a player when he was healthy and with the Rays, but yeah, I wouldn't mind him at all as a manager. Throw out another name. I don't want to talk about manager stuff too much, but just because we haven't mentioned the name and people are interested in manager talk, it seems like. But we haven't mentioned the name at all, like Ryan Flaherty. Any interest there? Any strong opinions about Flaherty getting the job? Because I know in San Diego, that was, I believe, like direct order of Manny Machado to bring Flaherty into the clubhouse because they have such a good relationship. And then now he's been with the Cubs and Craig Counsell. I don't know.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't hate it. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I know I've seen some people that are like, Flaherty's the guy. It's got to be Flaherty. And I'm like, I don't see that. But I could see him being a good manager or coach to have on staff if it worked that way. He's probably a hot commodity, honestly, in this market. But yeah, he's managed with some good guys. And maybe it was just Machado's like, hey, that's my buddy, bring him in. Or maybe it's, I know this guy's presence in a clubhouse and it's pretty strong. It didn't really work out for the Padres. What was it, 2023? But yeah, wouldn't hate it, but don't really care if it's him or not.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I personally would welcome it, and I would encourage any Orioles fan listening to this discussion right now to separate any feelings you had about Flaherty as a player from who he is as a coach, as a manager, because he's gotten very high grades within the industry as a coach. I will say one reason that I don't think it's going to happen is that there's been some reports out of San Diego that he was AJ Preller's top choice 2 years ago. Preller was overruled by ownership. Mike Silt got the job at the Padres. Silt is now gone. The Padres' job is extremely appealing to anybody who's on the market. And if Preller wanted him 2 years ago, and he can go back to ownership and say, well, your choice didn't work out. How about we do it my way now? And that sells ownership. He's going to the Padres. With that said, I don't know if AJ Preller is going to be with the Padres in a month. So a lot of to be determines there. But if the situation is stable enough in San Diego, I think that's where he's going to land.
Yeah, and you saw the Padres were linked with Pujols, giving him an interview potentially as well. Bruce Bochy is also kind of out there, kind of not. Maybe the not hearing much since he resigned or they mutually parted ways. Maybe that's the Orioles swooping in there trying to keep it hush-hush. I don't know. But another name. Plenty of names. No idea how they do, but plenty of names.
We'll go now to our last question tonight, which is from Vivek, who wants to dive into what's going on in the Arizona Fall League a little bit, with his question, which is it a stretch to say that the Orioles are dominating the AFL right now? We talked about Luis De Leon a little bit last week. Enrique Bradfield Jr. has been getting a lot of coverage nationally for how he has performed so far. Nick, I know you've been tweeting out some of the batted ball data with Ethan Anderson and Thomas Sosa. It has been really encouraging, not to mention a lot of fun to get so much StatCast data on these guys. So, Nick, I will actually start with you on this one. Is it fair to say the Orioles prospects are dominating in the Arizona Fall League right now?
Yeah, they are. These games are a lot of fun to watch, and it is because we get like the data with it. I'll just shout out before we end like some of the bigger conversation pieces real quick. Like Brandon Downer, 3.2 no-hit innings with 4 strikeouts, only 48 pitches, but he's using his sinker most frequently, and that's got a 33% whiff rate. There's success there. Carson Dorsey got roughed up the first outing, much better second outing, but I just love the data. He's sitting 95 from the left side with 17 inches of induced vertical break, 7 feet of extension from a 6'2 frame, 10-mile separation between the fastball and changeup. That's looking good. I think he's got a couple of offerings that are grading out as plus offerings down there in this small sample size. So going well for Dorsey. Tanner Smith has been fantastic. He's sitting 95, 96. I think he's touched 98. We know he's touched 99 before. He's 6'6 arm, 57% whiff rate on his slider, which is the second most used offering. A 110 stuff plus. Like that's not gonna say like, God, that's a steal from the Padres, but like I'm definitely gonna be paying attention to Tanner Smith next year in the regular season. Luis De Leon is pitching right now as we record, and it looks like that's going pretty well again. We've talked about him a lot already the last couple of weeks, though, and yeah, could not be going any better for Luis De Leon. Thomas Sosa, like I don't think we've learned anything like new about Sosa, but it is really cool to see his Statcast card is just, it's like 100 percentile max EV, 100 percentile average EV, 100 percentile pull fly ball rate. And he's whiffing a lot, but we know like there's going to be swing and miss. But when he hits, he does extreme damage, and he's doing that with a 112 max EV. In the AFL, it would be cool to see him kind of in the year these last couple of weeks here to have see if the results could follow against some of these older arms. Just be a nice little confidence boost. But as far as the batted ball data, yeah, he's going very well there. Ethan Anderson, I've been most impressed with Ethan Anderson, to be honest. And I said this the other day, I'm all in on a 2026 offensive breakout for Anderson. He's hitting 355, near 1,000 OPS. The max EVs aren't electric. It's just 107. But as far as like hard hit rate, barrel rate, he's making consistently good hard contact at the right angles. Very well there. And he's only catching when Luis De Leon pitches, I've noticed. So first base, DH, hang back in the nice weather and just let the bat eat, and it's eating pretty well. And then Bradfield, which I feel like we could talk about. I think you're seeing exactly what we want to see from Bradfield in the Arizona Fall League. And I think there was a chat every Tuesday. Baseball America does a chat, and someone asked basically like, what else do you want to see from Bradfield in the AFL? And I think it was Josh Norris had it this week, and he said maybe hit the ball a little harder, a little more consistently, but he's close. And like, I think that's pretty accurate. And that interview he did with Baseball America was just gold. Like, yeah, you're media trained. A lot of these guys are probably, especially after some incidents over the last couple of years, these guys, prospects are probably uber media trained. And you saw a lot of that with Bradfield in that specific interview, but there's a lot of authenticity when he speaks, and a lot of just he's determination in his answers that he gives. And which it's refreshing to hear him speak. And you look at the batted ball data, like I got to pull up the cards here real quick. I can't share them on the screen because like they're images. I don't want to pull up the website in town, but yeah, the numbers and data weren't great in AAA last year, but it was like 15 games, and I really don't care about anything he did in AAA last year because he was wrecked with those hamstring injuries and on the IL all year. And if you look already at the AFL data and compare the two, like his hard hit rate is up 38.5%. That's up 8% from his time in AAA. He's barreling the ball more. His max EV has gone from 103 to 107. His 90th percentile EV is up from 101 to 104. The whiff rate is much better in the AFL this year. His in-zone contact rate is about the same. But again, whiffing less, chasing less, pulling the ball more. Like the batted ball data, it's not like eye-popping, but it's trending in the right direction. And yeah, I think we're seeing, again, exactly what we want to see from Bradfield in the AFL.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, also just incredible defense. He's making highlight reel catches on the regular, stealing tons of bases, showing off the speed with the bunt single. And yeah, he's hitting the ball harder. Like, and I agree, the AAA numbers at the end of the year, like, I don't care about them at all. He's adjusting to a new level, coming back from injury. And as we've also learned, I think from that interview, or at least one of the things I've seen around him in the Arizona Fall League, is he's still making swing adjustments. He's got a new new swing where he's kind of got the bat higher up, and they're still tinkering with him. So he's certainly not like a finished product, but as Dan Sanchez on Blue Sky says, let's run the numbers. Assuming his 70 to 80 speed and defense, if that leads to say a plus 10 defense, plus 5 base running, he'd only need an 80 WRC plus, 220 batting average, 650 OPS to be a league average regular, a league average bat, 260 batting average, quick math, 715 OPS with plus 10 defense and plus 5 base running would be a 3.5 to 4 WAR player over 600 plate appearances compared to Bryson Stott. And yeah, that's the thing that I'm starting to wrap my head around recently, is that his defense is flat out elite. His speed is elite. Like center field defense, Joey Ortiz in 2025 had a 67 WRC plus, by all measures, a terrible season, right? With his struggles. Because of his incredible defense at important positions on the infield, he had a 1.4 FWAR. So if Bradfield's locked in to have that really high defensive rating, he doesn't really need to do much more than be the 9-hole hitter on this team, flip the lineup over, and be as close to league average as possible. And he's a very, very valuable player.
Yeah. And you talk about that speed, like just in the AFL so far, and I know it's AFL, I get it, but I think he's up to like 4 times, I think, already in like 10 or 11 games where he gets on with a single. Sometimes it's a bunt single, sometimes it's a drive up the middle, but he gets on with a single and immediately steals second and steals third. He's done that at least 4 times already. Like he's showing how much he can impact the game.
Yeah, and honestly, if he gets on base with a single, it's basically a double almost every time. Sometimes a triple, 4 times a triple. But yeah, going down to some other guys. Thomas Sosa, another Dan Sanchez tweet. He's really good. You got to follow him if you're on Blue Sky. Thomas Sosa, he has this AFL, a 77.12 mile per hour bat speed, which is the same as Aaron Judge. And a 93.4 miles per hour exit velocity, which is Pete Alonso. So he's doing that analytically at 20 years old. It's just, you can see why the sky is the limit with Thomas Sosa. So like the potential is huge when it comes to him. He's just got to make contact more often, get the ball in the air more often. But man, and he's only 20, so he could even get stronger. He could increase those things in the next year or two. Just tantalizing prospect. Would love to see him put it all together in 2026. Ethan Anderson, I agree. 2026, big time breakout candidate. I like the bat a lot. I think he was playing through injury plus focusing on defense a lot this year. I think they're going to let him loose next year, and it's going to look a lot different. Who else is there? When it comes to the pitchers, yeah, Luis De Leon, obviously, he's been shoving. He's worked his way into my personal top 10. We'll see where he lands when we do our preseason top 50 countdown. Join a Patreon if you want to get in on that around January 1st. And yeah, is it Tanner Smith? Right? Yeah. I couldn't remember. I'm thinking Tanner Scott. No, Tanner Smith. Please, no, not Tanner Scott. Yeah, I do like him a lot. I kind of said that when we were talking about the guys that are going. I'm like, I feel like Tanner Smith is going to be the guy that just comes out of nowhere, that seems like a really solid relief prospect when it's all said and done. And I think he's doing that. And Brandon Downer, yeah, he's not been a downer. He's been an upper to watch him pitch so far in the AFL.
Yeah, it's been really encouraging to see what these players do. I think De Leon, to me, is the one that has jumped out the most, because we have talked about how good the underlying pitch data is for years, and the results have not really always backed it up until this season, which was the best of his professional career so far. And to see him carry that over the Arizona Fall League, which is such a league that is skewed towards hitters, and to see him putting up the kind of results that he is really encouraging. And then with Bradfield, just some things I want to point out. Entering our recording here on Wednesday night, he was 8 for 8 in stolen base attempts in 8 games. And in that same Baseball America interview that you just mentioned, Nick, it was noted in there that he has a good shot of breaking the AFL stolen base record, which is the rate he's going. He might beat it by a lot. I don't remember the number off the top of my head specifically. I think it was 24, but he's got a real shot at that. I will say one thing I've been seeing a lot of coverage around Bradfield is I think too much is being made of his hamstring injuries last year. Yes, it did cost him a lot of time, but opposite hamstrings, different points in the season. It's not like he has a long history of this. So I wouldn't take that as a sign that he's injury prone going forward. It just means that he lost a little bit of development time this year and that he's going to have to make up for it this fall. You hope he can get through the season, which I think he will, and then go into next year. I don't think he's going to be big league ready on day one, which is why, as we talked about earlier, I do think the Orioles have to address the outfield. But I really think that the tools are there for him to be, like Bob just mentioned, 3.5, 4 win player, year in, year out. That's a pretty good center fielder. People were thrilled with that production from Cedric Mullins for years. So here's Bradfield, who is as good, if not a little bit better defender than Mullins, strike out a lot less. Maybe not for as much power, but the all-around tools are there for him to be a really solid everyday major leaguer.
I don't, we can, yes, he has like his faults, and yeah, there are areas of concern that are truly valid with Bradfield, and like not to get like overly excited here because, and again, this isn't just based on his AFL numbers. I don't care what the AFL stats truly say. I care about what the batted ball data is saying, which is trending in the right direction. But I just look at like the intangibles, some of the stuff you can't measure with Bradfield. And I've gotten to the point now, and this has been over the course of like the last 6 months. I think I'm getting to the point with Bradfield where like, if there's one guy that I don't think I want to bet against, like working his ass off to get to where he needs to be, I think it's going to be Bradfield. Like I'm getting there more and more when it comes to him. Is he going to be like an uber superstar? Maybe not. But he is going to give every ounce that he has. He's going to leave it all out there on the field. And I think he's going to be an electric player to watch in the major leagues. And I think we see him sooner than we're anticipating next year. I don't know.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree. And we've said in the past, like, he's the nicest guy, but man, he seems like exactly what this clubhouse needs. He's fiery. He's super competitive. Seems like just a natural born leader out there, not to mention all the stuff he can do on the field. So yeah, I think he's a presence that could benefit the team, even if it's not as a full-time regular in 2026. I think just having him out there, it's going to inspire some guys to want to match his level of how into it he is.
Absolutely. And with that, that does it for this week's episode. We'll be back next week. Depending on what happens in the World Series, we may be breaking down the start of the offseason, or we might have something else to discuss. But either way, we will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Blue Sky. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. Nick actually has a very good piece up recently about Esteban Mejia and Killer Morphe, comparing and contrasting their seasons in 2025. So check that out and a whole lot more over our Substack. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community today. You can join the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as our upcoming Top 50 Prospects Countdown. That will be launching here in the next few weeks, between now and January 1st, possibly. So you're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phil and Nick Stevens and Zach Spedden, you're listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.